The following interview was conducted with Stephen C. Baring, President Emeritus of Purdue University, for the Purdue University Oral History Program. It took place on Tuesday, December 18th, 2006, at his office in the Union Center. This is part 2. Welcome. Thank you, Dr. Baring. We talked the last time about the astronauts, and of course Purdue being the mother of the astronauts. What contributions do you see that Purdue has made to the space program? In some, I know we have the students here, but could you comment on that?
Well, we of course started with Amelia Earhart. Little did we know when the Purdue Research Foundation purchased the airplane for her that this would be not just her career, but really a lifetime event for the university and the foundation. And it was really great just a few years ago when we had a replica of the plane flown in here. You may remember that. And in the meantime, we had all of these aeronautical engineers who became astronauts and who came back to Purdue for the master's degree program. And we used to have a special program. I tried to get it restarted a few years back, but the Air Force was not interested in spending the money for it. But we had the special program to offer the master's degree for students who had been in the military academies or just were in the military and wanted to come here for a master's degree in aeronautical engineering. I presume in any other field of engineering as well. But we had a large number that went through that program. And so we built up a cadre of Purdue flyers that were test pilots and were in all kinds of endeavors, not just the Air Force, but also the Navy, and happened to all come together with the astronaut corps. And I didn't really know that in the beginning until one day Joe Rudolph, who was our alumni director for many, many years, said to me, "Do you suppose we could invite back one of our astronauts for homecoming?" And I said, "Well, yes." He said, "Well, they're difficult to get to. You have to know somebody and get special permission." And I said, "How many would you like to invite?" I know them all. At that point, I knew them all. Sure. At any rate, he told me that we at that point had like 18, which I had no idea about. And I had known all these people, but didn't ever ask where they went to college. And so we had this very special relationship through the NASA and through the Air Force and through flying and then Purdue. And I invited all 18 with their wives to come to that homecoming, and they came. And we had the most glorious weekend. And you may remember there was Neil Armstrong read the famous statement that we always have at football games. Yeah. And he did that to a hushed audience, and then they were all on the field, and he hit the drum because he had been in the band, and the cheerleader corps guided them to and from the field. They had as much fun as we did. It was glorious, and we did that a number of times after that. Right. Had as many astronauts as we could get.
They're very receptive about coming, aren't they?
Yes,
to coming.
They really are.
And they come for the space camp and things, so there's a great camaraderie between Purdue and the astronaut program.
They consider this home. Of course, it is in many ways. I'm looking forward to next spring when we'll dedicate Neil Armstrong Hall, and I know he's excited about it. I just had a Christmas card from him 2 days ago. He has allowed us to have all of his memorabilia, which will be displayed in Armstrong Hall.
Wonderful.
There will be a statue of him on the front lawn as a student, and then there will be proper oil painting on the inside in the entrance. And he's a very modest and unassuming gentleman. He doesn't like publicity, believe it or not, and he said more than most human beings. But he's willing to do it for Purdue. He really is. He's all excited about that.
Is there going to be enough? Will it be on permanent display in the area, in the atrium? Is that what it's going to be?
I'm not sure where it'll be.
Okay.
I haven't
But it's
seen
all of his memorabilia.
Yeah, he has just allowed us to have it all, and that's very precious.
That's very good.
So it'll be on permanent display.
Yeah, very good. I want to switch a little bit to the, I mentioned to you the last time, the Indiana legislature and your relations with the Budget Committee and also the Indiana Commission of Higher Education.
Right.
So
Right.
if you comment on some of those. You have close relationships with these groups.
Yes, I certainly have had, and probably have attended more of these sessions than any university person, because I go back to 1971, I think it was, when we passed the legislation for the Indiana statewide medical education system. And I appeared there like a yo-yo back and forth to testify and to cajole them into believing that we had a doctor shortage, which we again have, unfortunately, and to pass the legislation for that. The Higher Education Commission was right in the middle of that, and I have attended every monthly meeting of the Higher Education Commission throughout the time that I was with the medical school, and then throughout the time that I was at Purdue here until I relinquished the presidency. So that was from 1971 through 2000. And I presume that apart from the staff of the commission, no one has been there as frequently as I was. The commission has another relationship to Purdue in that the legislation that produced it was drafted by Dr. John Hicks, who was our senior vice president here and the longtime executive assistant to Art Hansen, and before that Fred Hovde, and just an extraordinary human being, a marvelous professor who was renowned throughout the country as an agricultural economist and a political scientist, and a tremendous lobbyist for Purdue in the legislature. And I must say that he taught me about everything that needed to be known about relating to the legislature. And I went with him initially when I came in 1982-83, that academic year. And then eventually he said to me one day, I'm not feeling very well today, but I think you're okay to solo when you go to the legislature. And so I did that. But in the process, of course, I got to know people like O'Bannon, who later became governor. He was the leader of the Senate for a good many years, and we became fast friends. I was with his wife last Sunday night. Jane and I were at an open house that she had for the holidays, and we reminisced a bit about the O'Bannon years. And she said, well, you knew him throughout his governorship. And I said, you'll be surprised. I've known him throughout the time he was leading the Senate, going back to the early 70s. And so many on both sides of the aisle. And I tried to, at all times, be nonpartisan, because I felt that the university needed to have the best relations with both Republicans and Democrats, not only in the state, but also at the federal level. And that came in very handy just recently when I was reappointed by the president to the National Science Board, and Senator Bayh and Senator Lugar, in a bipartisan gesture of great goodwill, were my nominators in the Senate. And so I didn't have to go through the routine of going through a hearing. I was endorsed by both parties, and I was very grateful for that. That was really neat.
Right. The Budget Committee, when the trustees, the budget goes there to the Budget Committee first, and then from there to the legislature. I'm asking that for clarification. So
the budget comes from the university, the staff to the trustees, from the trustees to the Higher Education Commission, and then from there to the legislative study committees that deal with the budget, both in the House and in the Senate. And sometimes they have joint hearings, and you can get it all done in one morning. Over the years, we had really superb relationships with them. They also make visits, site visits. The Budget Committee comes to the campuses, and that precedes their formal hearings. And the most memorable one I had was when we wanted to get the barracks alongside the entrance to the university removed. Finally, they were the World War II barracks, and we had them in there, and the roof collapsed, and the one we were not in, just the next door over. And the chair of the Budget Committee accused me of having wired that to convince them that we really needed to replace those old structures. Well, that's where Armstrong Hall is now, rising out of the ashes. And gosh, I tell you, most people remember that as the place they studied chemistry, and it was, of course, an eyesore as you drove into campus. But Armstrong Hall is going to make us proud. That'll be tremendous.
People use that as kind of a landmark. That there's been so many people over time that have seen that and recognized it and made comments about it. Your point is a good one then. The next thing, talk about your relations with the alumni. You have you visit with a lot of them, and you've made some trips. And share a little bit about that. Some personal
Well, of course, I helped create a lot of alumni. Close to 300,000 have my name on their diplomas, and I always felt that the lifeblood of the university is her people, her students, her alumni, her faculty, her staff, and that we had a continuity there that was remarkable, going back to the founding of the institution, a lot of history and tradition. And the alumni are enormously loyal to this institution. We have alumni in some 50 foreign countries, and of course in every state of the nation and the provinces of Canada. And wherever I have been, there has been a group of alumni who wanted to have coffee or lunch or dinner and reminisce about Purdue. Many of them travel to events that we have. They see their kids and grandchildren graduate. They go to the bowl games. I can't go this year, but we've been to quite a few bowl games over the years. And whenever those kinds of events occur, we have huge numbers of alums from all over. I've always been amazed at the alums who come regularly, have season tickets for basketball, men and women, and football, and travel long distances to attend the games.
Everyone.
Everyone. And it's just amazing. And then a number of them in recent times, since we have housing now for retirees in the neighborhood, they have actually retired here and come back here. Mm-hmm. And we've stayed in touch with all of these folks, and that has been the foundation for something extraordinarily important, and that is fundraising.
Right.
And Jane has been a master hostess and has really provided the hospitality for all of that.
One question on the alumni. Normally in the States, there have always been a large alumni chapters, but have you found that there's a lot of alumni chapters that have been grown up over the period of time because of their students that have come here, that international alumni
We have
groups?
alumni chapters everywhere.
And
I have
pretty
visited,
active?
Very active. I visited with the Hong Kong alumni chapter on 3 occasions, I think. Dr. Jiski recently went to India and had a tremendous time. I have been a number of times to the one in Germany because we also established a branch of the Granite School in Hanover, Germany. And they are enormously active. They meet monthly. I get emails from them, and always invited. Of course, it's unusual that I have a chance to go. I'll be going as part of the National Science Board in June of 2007. And I know the moment they find out that I'm around, they're going to want to come.
Get things planned.
We had a Glee Club tour one time that went through Austria and Czechoslovakia and Germany. And the Munich alumni chapter, which is our most active in Germany, announced the schedule of the Glee Club. And they came to all the meetings that we had for 2 weeks. They just traveled with us. They went by bike, by plane, by train, by bus. It was unbelievable. And when we finally left, it was like emigrating. I mean, they all stood around crying. You know, we were going back to the United States, and they were having to stay back,
leaving us in the lurch.
Leaving them.
Yeah.
No, it's just been remarkable. And then, there are many who have come back for another degree as well from these foreign countries.
Right. That school in Germany has really grown and really caught on.
Yes, it's been tremendously successful.
Right.
I'm happy to say.
And you were very much involved in
I had to haggle with them about this, and they were very finicky. And we established a foundation over there, and Chancellor Schroeder was willing to be the honorary head of that, which is very meaningful in Europe. And we raised a huge amount of money to make this happen. And it has sustained itself, and for the last 2 years has been ranked #1 in Europe.
That's great. That's
It's a
good. That's
tremendous
nice to
MBA
see.
program.
Nice to see that. Right. Yeah. The commitment to quality campaign. You want to get people thinking. are thinking more seriously about higher education. That seems to be growing, do you think, or within the state?
I
More of
think
a field.
so. Most of us are
remember.
beginning to be aware of the fact that without an education, your earning power is severely diminished, and your ability to make a contribution to society as well. And of course, it starts with high school and the family, really. But nowadays, when I graduated high school, I remember my father saying to me, this was in Pittsburgh, he said, you're set for life now, you have a high school diploma. And he was just so proud of that. Well, you're no longer set for life with a high school diploma. You have to, in fact, think of a bachelor's degree, and in most instances, at least a master's in addition. Engineering degree from here and an MBA is a wonderful combination. A number of my kids have that. And they find that when they get that they get an immediate promotion in both salary and position, and life is good. So we're beginning to know that, but in my more recent work in the last 5 years with the National Science Board, I chaired the committee that looked at the indicators for science, engineering, and technology in the world, and we published quite a tome on that. In fact, I'll be happy to give you a copy of it before you leave today, which demonstrates not only by state but by nation that America has fallen behind, and the Asian countries are way ahead. But the one country that is really at the very pinnacle of success is Ireland. We were there this past summer with the Purdue Alumni group, and I've been there 6 or 7 times. They are so proud of what they have achieved. When you think of where they've come from with the potato famine and the extreme poverty that has been characteristic of Ireland, and their extraordinary pride of being related to America. There are currently 4.3 million Irish, but there are over 40 million Irish Americans who are related to them. And no matter where I've been in Ireland, they always ask, where are you from? And you say, well, I'm from Lafayette. That doesn't mean anything. Indianapolis doesn't mean much unless you mention the Speedway. But if you say Chicago, oh, I have a cousin in Chicago, or Boston, or any of the large cities. It's a tremendous relationship, and they are so pleased to see Americans over there. But we have a lot to learn from them. They have year-round schooling. The parents are involved in the schooling from the beginning through high school, and they're all hoping to go to college. Now the country pays for college over there, and of course
the college?
For the college, yeah. And that's very common in Europe, that if you are able to go to college intellectually, and if you're willing to expend the effort, then you can get paid for that. And not personally, but I mean the tuition is waived. They don't understand why we charge, and they don't understand why we charge so much. In fact, yesterday I had a phone call from Hamburg, Germany, and they had heard that we have just raised the fees for housing here. And I said, well, that's kind of an inflation adjustment. We have to pay salaries, and we're in business for ourselves in the housing units, and it's a market phenomenon. It has nothing to do with the educational cost as such. Well, what does that cost? Well, that's expensive, but at Purdue, it's still a great, great bargain. Our fees and our housing charges and everything that we charge here is at the very low end of what it costs to go to college in America.
That's right.
But that's an issue. And so if you make it past high school and you're a middle-class family with 3 kids in college or hoping to go to college, that's going to be very difficult to get them all paid for and through college.
Do you think that the community college system has affected some of this, that some of them are, now that it's easier to transition to a 4-year school?
Well, I certainly was hoping that, and Stan Jones and I had many discussions about that. He's the Commissioner for Higher Education, Purdue alum, by the way. Yeah. And we had hoped that this was going to fill the void and was going to provide an easy access to college and transition from high school. And it turns out that nationwide, about 10% of the graduates of the 2-year programs go on to college and do it. And it's even more saddening that so few graduate from the 2-year program. They drop out for lots of reasons, usually related to finances and home and job and family responsibilities. But it's not been a perfect answer, but it is an answer, and we need to continue to pursue that.
Well, a lot of them are in the health field, or certain, certification sort of programs that many of them are offered at that.
Yes.
And
yes.
so there's a 1 or 2 year program, and it meets that need.
It meets the need, and they go to work.
Right, exactly, that's right. Now let's turn to the regional campuses. They certainly have grown, and you've been involved. And tell us a little bit. North Central was 25 years old in '92. They've really grown. Some of the changes that you've in your presidency, and beforehand too.
Pardon?
And beforehand, because
I was involved with it at IU, and we started. It was really built on the Purdue model when we got the regional medical centers going. And they're still going beautifully. We have one here. We have one at each major university campus. There are 9 altogether throughout the state. And it's been copied throughout the country and even abroad. It's been copied in Ireland and England.
Purdue was the first one to do that regional thing?
Purdue and Notre Dame were
okay.
the two original ones back in 19... we had 2 students here, would you believe, who were studying the first year of medicine in the basement of the vet school. And I hope one of these days we can get a building for the medical programs here. We've had buildings built now at Notre Dame and at Fort Wayne, and it's been, immediately successful with research for the faculty and more space for the students and so on. But the notion was that we would stem the tide of the problem of not having enough doctors, particularly in primary care and family medicine, internal medicine, obstetrics, and gynecology. And this has really worked. We not only combined the center locations with continuing education for medicine and health sciences generally, but also with residencies. This is where they go into specialty work, and particularly we had hoped to build up residencies in family practice. And all of that came about and thrived for a good many years. And then I think people began to realize that, we ought to expand these programs. And the initial expansion was to a second year, and we've had for many years here now the first 2 years of medicine. And the dean has just decided, together with a council of advisors on which I serve still, that we ought to make it 4-year programs. And that's going to be a major undertaking because the clinical resources that are needed to teach the clinical specialties, the hospital and clinic resources are going to be enormous. And we have a lot of physicians in the communities that are capable of doing that, but will they have the time? They certainly have the commitment, the interest, but will they have the time? So I'm not sure about how easily this is going to be implemented. But that's going to be attempted starting this next year in '07, and they're going to try to increase the number of students at each of the centers, and they hope to increase the enrollment of the already second largest medical enrollment in the country by at least 10% in the next several years. And I'm sure they'll want to go beyond that from what I've heard.
Right. Now, the Purdue's regional campuses have become autonomous over time now, right?
Yes,
they have grown, and now they have residents.
They started with associate degrees, of course, and filling in. There was then hope to have master's degrees in education when that was still a requirement for teachers. And we did that. That's no longer a requirement, interestingly enough. I guess because everyone is doing it anyhow, so they're no longer having to be legislated into it. Then we decided that we would really try to have, for the people in those catchment areas, full programs so that they didn't just have associate degrees or an occasional course, but they could get a bachelor's degree and then master's degrees. We don't have any doctorates out there yet in the regional campuses, except for Indianapolis, which of course has an extraordinary array of everything, both IU and Purdue offerings, and lots of doctorates and lots of research and over 30,000 students. That's a college in its own. And I'm sure it'll happen again that somebody in the city of Indianapolis will want to claim it for their own and not have IU and Purdue associated with it. I've always argued against that because what really counts in the world as you travel about is the identity of the Big Ten degree. And I'm not prejudiced one way or the other, but if you have a Big Ten degree, you're going to be immediately an item in the job market and recognized as having a quality education. So if they called it Hoosier State or something like that, it wouldn't be the same.
All right, exactly. But even in the regional campuses, the students, many of them are staying there for all four years now.
Yes,
There's
they
not
are.
as much coming down here
Oh,
as they
no,
have.
no, they're
So that's been a
absolutely able
change.
to do the whole thing there, and
Right.
that's very good. And in fact, for a while there, our faculty here were concerned that we'd have a watered-down experience at the regional campuses. And we came up with a very clever solution to that, which pleased the local pride and also the local concern here. And that was, we just put on the diploma, given at Fort Wayne, given at North Central, given at Indianapolis, so that it was clear it was not at Lafayette or Bloomington.
Right.
And I think everyone is now calm about that.
And you also you also go for the commencements too, which
I did all the commencements.
I know.
That's a story and a half. I did, in my last number of years here, 15 commencements a year. And of course, we had like 7 on the main campus. But then we had a winter commencement and a summer commencement everywhere, plus the ones in May. So it was very meaningful. And one of the most meaningful is the commencement at the prison. We have a prison program as part of the North Central campus offerings. And I want to tell you, there's commitment when you see
comment, what
those
sort of an
prisoners.
experience? Do they have it right inside there?
Have it in their gym. Yeah.
I'm
And
going to stop you right now because I'm
Okay.
about to run out.
Okay.
Just before we get
Okay.
going. So.
this-
Okay.
we were going to prison, okay.
Okay.
The gospel of forgiveness, because these people had now paid back. Society had forgiven them, and they were ready to start over. And the shortest book in the Bible is Paul's letter to Philemon, or Philemon, if you're a Greek scholar.
Excuse me. You let me know when we get
We're all
towards
set.
it.
I'm rolling. We're
Because
all
we're
set.
doing this is the last Thursday. Okay.
Okay.
Go
You're
ahead.
already
Finish on the
rolling.
prison. We're rolling.
Do you
Okay.
want to hear that about the prison?
Yes. Go ahead. Just
So
make a comment.
I talked about Paul's letter to Philemon, and the star of that little epistle, which is only a page long, is a former Greek slave by the name of Onesimus. The meaning of that name is useful. And so I said, like Onesimus, you were useful once to society and yourselves and your family. You have now paid your debt. You're useful again. And go and do great things. Well, when this was over, a week later, one of these newly graduated former inmates came to see me. And he was in tears. He was really emotionally worked up. And he said, you know, after we had the commencement and you talked to us about Onesimus, I was talking to our prison chaplain. And I said, I want to now become a church-going member of society. And he let me read with him that particular passage. And he hadn't been at the commencement. He didn't know about that. And he said, I thought this was a sign from the Almighty that both you and the chaplain used the same passage of Scripture about forgiveness. And he said, I'm going straight from now on. It's a very moving event.
Oh, I know, right. When you got some partnerships that Purdue has been, like the TAP and the Statewide Technology Program and agriculture courses had it. How does that work? And that's really expanded, hasn't it? I think the TAP program seems to be expanding even
Yes,
more.
of course, the whole thing
And the
has
statewide.
been. Yeah, my medical program owes its origin to Purdue Agriculture as well, the extension program.
Okay.
And in fact, I first met many of the faculty here because of that regional program. And I was out there in the state, and they were out in the state, and we became good friends because we had the same goals and aims and ambitions. And it seemed a natural extension after we had done the medical program that we ought to do economic development using ag extension as a model, and the research park as one of the major motors of that, which we did. And the TAP program was, of course, the way that the School of Technology tied into this and became bigger than anything we'd ever thought of. It was from the beginning immediately accepted. and is now part of the fabric of the state's economic development, and I think very, very happily so.
On the statewide technology, for the people who are going to be reading the transcript, explain a little bit what that particular program versus the TAP. Both you and I know it, but I'm thinking of people who will hear the term.
The
Sorry.
statewide technology program is an extension of the School of Technology, and they have branches, if you will, at each of our regional campuses. And then the TAP program is a special technical assistance program, which is both related to but independent of the technology efforts, because it's not for degrees. It's to help business and industry. It is to give them the latest information and to get them on their feet. And this may be as simple as writing a business plan. It may be as complex as helping them develop a patented event of some kind, a procedure or a gadget. And all of these things have been done and have been greeted with enthusiasm.
On the statewide technology, you can get your degree from Purdue.
Yes, all of these are Purdue degrees.
Except the TAP one, of course, is just
There's
for the
no
business.
degree there,
right,
no.
okay. Well, we've got some honors and awards. What did you think about when the Indiana legislature, when they passed that special law honoring before you retired, that as highlighting your accomplishments as president? Did that catch you by surprise?
Yeah, I did. I didn't know that they did that, actually, because I'm not in the business of trying to get awards. But I was very moved by that. And what was part of that, which was really unusual, they asked me to address the General Assembly, both the House and the Senate. And that's not done unless you're a member of the group. You're not asked to. You can't get up and speak. And so they set aside the rules, and I spoke to them about the Purdue experience and about what it means to be a Hoosier, and what our general goals and ambitions are in the state, and how working together we can do anything. And of course, all I saw in the audience was friends. These were people and are people that I've worked with for all these years. We've been in Indiana 38 years now, and when someone asks me where am I from, I say I'm from Indiana, I don't mention Germany or Pittsburgh or any of these other places.
This is home.
This is home.
Right. Oh, that was kind of, and you had some other things too. How about when you got the honorary degrees? Were you and Jane surprised at that?
Well, yes, I knew that kind of thing would or could happen, but you may not know that the diplomas were flown around in space by Jerry Ross. And so these are unique parchments, very unique, and we have a letter in the back of them that talks about that. We had, by the way, John Blahar, one of our astronauts, addressed the commencement one year when his daughter was graduating, one of his daughters, from space. We coordinated that, and
I remember reading about that.
I riveted everybody in the audience to the seat. It was astounding to contemplate that. He was flying around, and here he was talking to us.
Commencement must have been kind of special because you did you give to John and also your other son, both of them graduated from Purdue while you were the president, or just the one?
No, I did both of them.
Both
yes.
of them.
The first one was David, and that was a memorable commencement address of all the many hundreds I've done. I asked the audience if they would mind if I would read the letter from a grateful parent about his son's graduation. I didn't tell him it was me or David. So I read this letter addressed to David, which recounted some of the important experiences that we both had shared. And then at the very end, I revealed that, David, your mother and I are so proud of you. The place was on its feet. It was
What a nice
extraordinary. Touch. And then when he came across the stage, as you know, the deans hand out the diplomas. But in this case, the engineering dean handed the diploma to me so I could personally give it to David. And we hugged on the stage, and everybody was again on their feet. It was very moving.
And also when John, you did. How did John? Somebody give it to you, and then you gave John.
Yeah, I
his?
did the same with John. I didn't do the hokey thing with a letter. I did a regular commencement
talk. Oh, that
talk.
sounds good.
David has that particular address behind his diploma. It's framed with the diploma.
Are the honorary degrees, did you get them framed? Do you have them?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh,
yeah.
that's kind of a special thing. Well, now we move on
in
to...
my study at home.
Right. Let's move on a little bit. President Emeritus, are you still the chair? Are you still in the Purdue Research Foundation?
No, last year I became emeritus director
Okay.
there as well.
And are you still on the Indiana Corporation for Science and Technology? Is that still going, that Indiana Corporation for Science and Technology?
No, it's
If
not in that form, no.
It
I'm
might
no longer.
have been changing the name. But now, currently, tell us a little bit about how you got on the National Science Board and other things you've sort of been doing in your life.
Well, I've been trying to be a goodwill ambassador for Purdue and help recruit students, and sometimes I've helped interview candidates for dean, things like that, when asked. And of course, I'm here at least one day a week and try to be available. But in the main, and I've been honorary co-chair of some of our campaign that is ongoing right now for the Indianapolis campaign. Jane and I are both honorary co-chairs, and we've each year we have done at least one trip for Purdue, hosting a group going somewhere. We've actually done two this past year. We went to Mexico and we went to Ireland. And we have a bunch of folks who've traveled with us over the years on numerous occasions, and I'll get Christmas notes and the cards saying, "Where are we going next year?" You know, they're already signed up in their mind.
You've got your group.
So those are things we've done.
Yeah.
But the appointment to the National Science Board came out of the blue. I still don't know who nominated me or how I got involved in that, but it's a presidential appointment with Senate confirmation, and if I may humbly say so, it's a big deal. And it was an even bigger deal when the board itself elected me unanimously their chair 8 months ago. What I didn't know was that this is really a full-time thing. And it's not paid, it's a volunteer effort. But I'm in Washington, 4 or 5 days a week. And starting in January, I'll be there really full-time because we have a brand new cast of characters in the Congress. All the chairs have changed. And I'll be briefing the various key committee chairs on what the National Science Foundation is doing. I'll have a couple days of testimony for the budget for the National Science Foundation at the National Science Board. We have about a $7.5 billion budget. That's real change. And also we have, the next 2 years, we have a celebration of our South Pole project. It's called the International Polar Year. It's an international effort which the United States is in charge of. Extraordinary stuff goes on there, like the study of the ozone layer, the study of atmospheric events, the study of the oceans, the study of the ice pack and the animal, the flora and fauna of that part of the world. It's a whole revelation to me because that was not my field, but I've become fairly knowledgeable about the science and engineering things that the National Science Board supports. And the price tag is a surprise. For example, before Christmas break, Secretary handed me a couple pieces of paper and said, "We need your signature on this. We're buying 2 icebreakers for the South Pole." I said, "Oh, okay, fine." Then I glanced down and I saw they're $750 million a piece.
You need that to get through that stuff. The
Yeah.
ice.
Oh, yeah. It's unique icebreakers, but nonetheless, they can go through 18 feet of ice, break it up, and this is needed so the ship channel is open to resupply the
Sure.
base. And you can't fly in there for many months out of the year; it's too cold.
How long is your appointment on the National Science Board?
They're 6-year appointments, renewable. I'm in my second term. And the chairmanship is a 2-year election, also renewable. And I'm in my first term
Okay.
of that.
Do you have an office down in
Oh, yeah.
Washington?
I have an office and a staff of about 35 people in Arlington, Virginia. And it's an interesting...
It's a challenge. I know one other thing I read, you're now the FAC Fellow over in Harrison. Were you a FAC Fellow?
I was for a good many years.
Oh,
but
while you were
obviously-
president, were you a FAC Fellow as
Yeah,
well? Oh,
right.
okay.
Well, I couldn't carry it on now.
Okay. And that's an interesting program. I've been
Yeah.
a fact fellow in Tarkington for a long time, and I really enjoy it.
Absolutely.
It's just
Well, all the years we were here, we of course had students and faculty and staff and alumni at
Sure.
the President's Home, but I belong to a lot of these organizations, even as a student in my own right, like ODK, for example, Phi Beta Kappa, things like that. And so I continued my involvement in these things, and I enjoyed that very much. Gave me a chance to be with
It really, I
students.
think it adds a nice dimension, and I know it seems to be sometimes, but this year, I know a couple of years in Tarkington, they were short on some people, but they've got enough, all the floors are covered. And what they do, maybe they do in Harrison, you get to know the students on one floor, which works out
Right.
a lot better.
Right.
And then you get together with them rather than just dropping in and this sort of thing. But it's just a great program. It's been going for years.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Hovde's the one that got it started.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's great when you meet students at that level. Recently, I had the pleasure of seeing a handsome young woman walk past me and saying, "Don't you remember me? I'm Jennifer Dobbs. I'm on the faculty here now." And we met when she was a freshman, and off and on would see each other. And she became a Beering Scholar, and so we'd
It's nice to keep that
have
contact.
a chance to meet her family and all
Right,
that.
yeah.
And now she's on the faculty. That's really a wonderful achievement.
One of the things that I read, the opportunity to be involved in education through Purdue has been the highlight of a lifetime in public service. Purdue is not a job for us, it's a life. That's a very good quote.
It's a calling, yeah.
Yes, it really
Yeah.
is.
I've always felt that way about it.
Right. And can you, any comment on that? What your legacy when do people ask you that, and how do you address that?
Well, I'm usually not asked that, but,
Oh,
but
okay.
you know,
You just do it, right?
you
Yeah.
just do it.
Right.
I mean, how could I have predicted? Some people will say, "What did you do to prepare to become president?" Or what are the steps that you feel I should take if I wanted to become a president? There was never a thought in my mind that I wanted to be a president or a dean of medicine or anything of the things I'd done. And I've always felt that you ought to do the best possible job that you could every day and work for others and not for yourself, and never mind who gets the credit. And if you see a need, you try to address it. And then when the opportunities come along, I turned down Purdue the first time I was asked. I'm embarrassed to admit that, but Don Powers, who's, in fact, I'll be having dinner with him tonight up in Munster, Indiana. He will recall that. He was chairman of the board at the time when I was recruited. And I said to him at the time, "You're crazy." I said, "This doesn't work. A doctor from IU coming to Purdue, that can't happen. Wouldn't work. They wouldn't have me." And Fred Andrews was one of the people who was involved. John Hicks was involved, and of course faculty committees. And these people came to see me in my dean's office in Indianapolis. And they said, "You got us all wrong. We're really neat people at Purdue, and you ought to at least give us a look." And I was embarrassed about that, and I said, "Well, yeah, I should." Then my number 2 son called, David, and he was then a junior in engineering, or a sophomore, I'm not exactly certain. At any rate, he said, "You know, we're really fine people, and you don't know about Purdue. You ought to find out about it. Come look." And, you know, we did, and of course the rest is history. This was the most significant event of our adult lives, both for Jane and for me. We accepted it as a calling. We accepted it as something that the good Lord had ordained, and that we ought to use as an opportunity to help others. And we've enjoyed every moment of it. We're still enjoying it, and we're grateful for the opportunity to do it.
That's very good. What would you suggest? An outstanding event in your life? That's kind of an open-ended question. Do you have anything special on that? Or some memorable event that
It'll
sticks-
surprise you. Take a look at the wall right above you here. The most outstanding event in my life was coming to America.
Very good.
July 24th, 1948, and we came to the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island. We were one of the last groups that actually went through Ellis Island. And this picture there has scaffolding around the statue on its 100th anniversary when it was being redone. And on the bottom of that, there's a bronze plaque of a group of individuals, where I'm right on top because of the alphabet, of Ellis Island Americans. These are individuals who were selected by a committee because they were immigrants who came through Ellis Island and made the most of the American dream.
Wonderful. That's very nice. That is very outstanding and very memorable. Any comments in general in wrapping up that you'd like to share? One question I did want to ask, and I've been asking the people, is you know it's going to be turned over to the archives and special collections. And for researchers, or do you see the preservation and archival thing, any comments on that? The value of it, or how it's
I'm
grown?
delighted you're doing this because so many times when you read biography, which I love to do, and history, there are no original sources, and it's all guesswork, right? And you try to piece it together from fragments that are perhaps okay, but you're not sure. So when Virginia Carnes gave the money to help create this, and she's a dear friend of ours, and Bill Carnes, her deceased husband, was likewise, I just was so thrilled. I called her and thanked her and said, "You've done something that is going to be for all times, because it'll go on living. It'll be history that will be alive and fresh and meaningful to everybody." So I'm thrilled you're doing this, and I wish you well with it.
I thank you. And this concludes it. I want to thank you very much, Dr. Bering. It's been very pleasurable. I've enjoyed it very much.
You're quite welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.